If you're here for a full summary of Yumi the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson, you are in the right place. My hope is that you've already read and love this book. But if you're here because you just want to know what happens in the story, then again, I'm glad you made your way to this video. And once again, you are in the right place. This is one of the secret projects that came out in the year 2023, and it was wonderful. This is not a review video, so if you're curious about my thoughts and opinions on this book, then go ahead and check out my channel. I have both a spoiler-free and spoiler review of this book, so go check those out. I will drop the links below in the description box, or if you peruse my channel, you'll find a lot of Brandon Sanderson related content there. I'm glad to have you, so if you haven't done so already, feel free to subscribe to my channel, and without further ado, let's get into the events that occurred in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, a cosmere novel, by the way. But you don't need to have any prior experience with Brandon's works to be able to enjoy Yumi the Nightmare Painter. So here we go. The Nightmare Painter, his actual name is Nikero, is walking through the dark streets of Kilahito where it is perpetually dark. The Heian lines are lines or cords of energy that power the city. Painter works alone, although he doesn't necessarily have to. He encounters two Nightmare Painters. Nikero has a history with Arcane and Tojin, but is not close to either of them anymore. There was a falling star the day of Yumi's birth, indicating that she was chosen by the spirits. She was taken from her home and raised to accomplish a holy and important duty. Yumi is not granted freedom to do anything on her own. Her attendants dress, feed, bathe, and fan her. Both Yumi and Painter are 19 years old. Yumi is chosen. She is one of the few Yoki-Hijo, the girl of commanding spirits. Yumi is in Torio. The kingdom of Torio is different from where Painter lives in Kilahito. Torio has sunlight, and the ground burns so hot that special clogs have to be worn to protect the feet from burning. Their plants float and have to be tethered to the ground. There are 100 days until the festival in Torio City. Yumi takes a bath in the cold spring, where her attendants soap her up excessively as part of the ritual. She has to remain underwater for a count of 144 before she can resurface. Yumi craves more for her life and is not content with this privileged lifestyle, but feels guilty as she understands that she was selected for this duty and it is considered a great honor. Yumi is one of the 14 chosen Yoki-Hijo. Layun approaches Yumi. Layun is her warden. Yumi wants to ask to attend the festival in plain clothing to spend one day as a normal person. Layun assumes that Yumi wants to go pray and give thanks for being chosen by the spirits. Yumi doesn't correct Layun's assumption. Painter is on patrol when he sees a nightmare, a shadowy dark figure peeking its head into a home. Painter draws a long paintbrush and a piece of canvas to draw a bamboo plant. This changes the nightmare's form from a monstrous figure into a bamboo shape, and the nightmare evaporates. Yumi stacks rocks while calling to the spirits. She feels guilty for craving freedom and thinks that the spirits deserve someone better than her. She works for hours and hours and creates an impressive display and summons 37 spirits, the most she has ever summoned. The first supplicant comes and asks for light in his home. The next asks for a repelling pair to lift dairy into the air to stay cool so she can make butter. Many request flyers, hovering devices to help care for crops during the daytime. The spirits comply and all 37 supplicants get their requests granted by the spirits. Yumi is exhausted and falls unconscious. Painter gets berated by Tsukishi when he turns in his two paintings of bamboo. Tsukishi says that always doing bamboo is lazy and he should draw what nightmares actually resemble. Painter collects his wages and goes to the noodle pupil for dinner. The narrator, Hoid, is part owner of this noodle shop. Painter sits alone at the bar even though there are several other painters there. Design is the manager of the shop and she goes to wait on Painter. He asks for the usual. Design is beautiful, white hair and curvy. She is not human. She's wearing a disguise made by light weaving. Painter admires her as she prepares his meal. Design is revealed to be a cryptic, and the coat rack at the front of the store is in the shape of our beloved narrator Hoid. Design offers to help Painter integrate himself with the other painters and build connections, but he declines. Painter leaves the restaurant and reflects on the fact that he is a loner, but doesn't want to be. He heads toward his apartment and sees signs of a nightmare that recently passed through. He's off shift and determines to go home and let an on-shift painter take care of it, but he finds himself pursuing the nightmare instead of going home. Hoid talks about himself and how he arrived on the planet and immediately froze in place. He can't really explain how he knows the story except that he can hear Yumi and Painter and sometimes he can see full-on motion images. But he knows that his story is somehow connected to theirs. Yumi wakes up in her wagon. She is exhausted and unhappy and finds herself crying when Layun approaches. She has a brief conversation with Layun. Yumi asks her how she did today, seeking a compliment for summoning 37 spirits, but Layun accuses Yumi of holding back in previous rituals at other towns. Layun demands that Yumi perform similarly or better at the next town, so that other communities don't assume that some are more worthy to receive larger volume of spirits than others. Layun leaves and Yumi feels overwhelmed with emotion. Shame, sadness, anger. She considers running away, but she knows she won't. Yumi hears a spirit speak to her, saying that the spirits are trapped, like her. They ask Yumi to free them. Yumi agrees to do what she can, and then everything goes black. Painter struggles to track and find the nightmare, but eventually locates it in a home of a poor family. The nightmare is feeding off the nightmare of a young boy in bed with his parents. Painter is horrified to see that the nightmare is stable, the product of having fed at least 10 times. Painter knows that he should report it to his superiors, who are better trained to deal with nightmares as dangerous as this one. But Painter knows that if he doesn't do something, it will just grow stronger, so he takes out his canvas and begins to draw bamboo, but realizes that it won't work this time. He pulls out his last canvas and begins to draw the boy's mother. This makes the nightmare flee. Painter speaks with the father, who thanks him for what he did. Painter suggests that the father take the family out of town until they can deal with the nightmare. Painter intends to report the attack, but exhaustion hits him and he ends up making his way to his apartment. The fatigue overwhelms him and he opens his window only to be struck from something from the sky. All goes black. He wakes up next to Yumi, who begins screaming when she wakes. Painter considers whether he's in a dream, and if Yumi is a nightmare. He discards both theories. Yumi's fingers pass through the blanket she is trying to grab, and Painter is confused by her being incorporeal. They both realize that they are tethered together and cannot simply go their separate ways. They can only go a short distance away from one another. Yumi mistakes Painter for the spirit she spoke with earlier, and Painter plays along like he knows what she's talking about. Yumi's 2 attendants, Hwanji and Chaeyoung, enter, but they cannot see or hear Yumi. They pass right by her, and Yumi is horrified to see that Painter, who she believes to be the spirit, has taken her shape. Painter, still playing along like he knows what's going on, takes the rice from the attendants, and when he asks if they have anything to go with it, the women are horrified that Yumi is breaking the ritual by feeding herself and addressing the attendants directly. They leave abruptly to get the warden. Yumi is furious that the spirit took her shape and embarrassed her. Painter admits that he is not the spirit and he believes he is from a totally different planet. Yumi corrects her theory that Painter was sent by the spirits to help her free them. Yumi touches Painter's hand and they both feel a jolt of warm, electric, tingling sensation. Layun appears. Yumi tells Painter how to react and respond, and Painter does well taking direction. Yumi coaches Painter through the meal ritual, and now it's time for the ritual bath. The scene is awkward because the servants see Painter as Yumi, but Yumi sees Painter as Painter. Painter catches her staring down at his area during the bathing ritual. She becomes incredibly embarrassed. Painter finds himself excited to help Yumi and isn't desperate to return to his world, though he feels haunted by the fact that he never reported the stable nightmare. Painter and Yumi wonder why her hair appears wet from the bath even though she is incorporeal and can't touch anything. As Painter is dressed for the ritual, he feels suddenly unwell and faints. He wakes up in his apartment with Yumi beside him. Now he is transparent and believes that she is in his place, wearing his pajamas. They still appear as they are to each other, but they believe that they have switched places, and to others, Yumi will appear like Painter. Yumi answers a knock at the door. It's the foreman, and both Yumi and Painter are surprised that he can see her as Yumi, but wearing Painter's clothes. Yumi is embarrassed that she is not dressed appropriately and that her hair isn't done properly. The foreman says that Painter missed a day of work and he's supposed to call out as they are already short-staffed. Painter tells Yumi to tell him that he's sick. Painter has Yumi report the stable nightmare to the foreman, telling him to engage the dream watch. As the foreman leaves, the doors to the apartment across the hall open, and Yumi is stunned by Arcane's beauty. When Painter sees this, he is worried that Arcane will assume he is sleeping with Yumi and tells Yumi to tell Arcane that she is his sister. Yumi assumes her to be a concubine of Painter's. Yumi has a conversation with Arcane and discovers that Painter is not the hero that she assumed he was. Yumi is flustered and ends up stacking a variety of plates and other kitchenware and tries to call to the spirits, but it doesn't work. Yumi eats packets of raw noodles because she is starving. They watch Painter's version of TV, called a Heian viewer, and Yumi is addicted and impressed by the technology. They swap back to Yumi's world, and Yumi is pissed at Painter and calls him a liar. She coaches him on how to talk to Layun when she chastises Yumi for fainting. They both go to the ritual bath in the cold spring, and they face off with a staring contest where they get closer and closer until their noses touch and they feel that sensation again. Shared frustration and passion. It is a distracting feeling to both of them. Yumi updates her theory as to why Painter was sent to her. She believes the spirits selected him because he was a prodigy at stacking rocks. Yumi walks Painter through the meditations before the ritual begins. Painter has no idea how to meditate properly, and Yumi is surprised at his lack of basic knowledge in the matter. When the ceremony begins, Yumi is about to see if her theory is correct. Yumi was wrong. Painter fails to stack even one rock upon the other. The observers gasp, and Layun appears horrified. Painter and Yumi wake up back in Painter's apartment. Yumi insists on training Painter so that they can call and speak to the spirits back in her world. Painter resists the idea, as this is his world, and he insists that he make the rules. Plus, he needs to check in with the foreman to check on his report of the stable nightmare, and he wants to check in with the family that he saved. Before they go, he walks Yumi through how to shower by herself. She's never bathed without attendance, and he has to explain to her what shampoo and conditioner is. Yumi highly enjoys the shower. Painter leans against the bedroom door and realizes that he doesn't fall right through it. He wonders why sometimes he can touch things, and other times he can't. When Yumi finishes her shower, she dresses in several layers of Painter's clothes. She looks ridiculous. They leave the apartment, and Painter points out the star in the sky that he believes to be Yumi's planet. They visit the foreman, and Yumi inquires about an update regarding the nightmare they reported. The foreman clearly has not taken action and doesn't believe Painter was telling the truth. The foreman says that Painter is dramatic and makes stuff up so he can get attention. Yumi and Painter leave, feeling frustrated and concerned that the nightmare will not be dealt with. As they arrive back at the apartment, they run into Arcane, who offers to take Yumi shopping for new clothes. Yumi bursts into tears and accepts. Arcane takes Yumi to a store to pick out a few dresses. Yumi realizes that she doesn't have money, but Arcane says that she will buy the clothes and make Painter, Yumi's brother, reimburse her. As Yumi waits in the dressing room for Arcane to return with the dress options, she asks Painter why he likes Arcane, aside from the fact that she is pretty. Painter hesitates before saying that Arcane was kind to him when they were in school. In turn, Arcane comments that it's not Yumi's fault that her brother is a creep. Yumi picks out a stunning blue dress, and for the first time in her life, she desires possessions. Something that she picked out for herself, and something that she owns. Arcane invites Yumi to go to the Noodle Pupil with her and her friends. Yumi accepts. Arcane introduces Yumi to Tojin, Masaka, and Izumakamo, also known as Izzy. Tojin is exercising his hands. Masaka has a dark intensity about her, and Izzy likes to predict people's fortunes based on their birth year and month, with a system she invented that she calls Dramascope. Painter feels pained by the friends that he lost, and he wanders over to the bar alone. Yumi shortly joins him and says that her experience here is dangerous because they make her crave more than the life that she has at home. Painter realizes that she also feels alone and isolated. He encourages her to enjoy her time and think of this as a reward, though Yumi can't agree that this is a reward considering the spirit who came to her in pain asking for help. Suddenly, Design appears and drops a bowl of noodles, asking Painter if he's dead. Design looks at Painter and says that he has a girl's body now. She addresses Yumi and says that she has a strong spiritual aspect that is highly invested, that she rewrote his body with her soul and reshaped the bones and stretched the muscles. Design tries to hand Painter the mop, but it passes right through his fingers. Yumi and Painter ask Design if she can help. She says that she can try, but they need Hoid. When they ask where to find him, she points toward the coat rack. Hoid is the coat rack. Yumi asks if they can wake Hoid up, and Design says that she's tried. Design says that she needs time to think about things and how she can help. In the meantime, she has customers to serve. Yumi says goodbye to Arcane and her friends, and Yumi and Painter return to his apartment. Yumi fights her desire to have choice and freedom in her life and tells Painter that in her world, she will teach him how to stack stone and perform the duty, and while in his world, he will teach her how to paint and fight off nightmares. They are back in Yumi's world, and Yumi makes Painter apologize to Layun and suggests that she retrain the art of stacking stones. Layun says that she will talk to the town leaders, but that the town already feels shame for her failings and feel unworthy for her being unable to call the spirits. Yumi starts teaching Painter the art of stone stacking. She starts by simply picking up rocks and weighing them and finding where the center of gravity is. Yumi doesn't have much luck teaching Painter to stack stones. He is stubborn and difficult to teach. As they walk back to the wagon with Layun, they are transported back to Painter's world. Yumi takes a cold shower. She doesn't want to enjoy the luxury of a warm shower, and Painter discovers that he was able to change his clothes by meditating and focusing on the clothing article. There's a knock on the door, and when Yumi opens it, she finds a letter. It's a suspension letter from the foreman releasing Painter from his duties for a month without pay. This is in consequence of his lie about the stable nightmare. Painter teaches Yumi how to paint bamboo. Yumi spots a portfolio in the trunk, and when she goes to grab it, Painter stops her and tells her that she doesn't get to touch that. Ever. He touches her hand and their hands merge together. Yumi is flooded with warmth. Yumi wants to be a good student and paints as instructed without question. There's a knock on the door and it's Arcane asking Yumi to dinner. Yumi lies and says that she's studying for upper school. Arcane offers to bring her food. Yumi takes a break from painting and looks out the window. Her attention is brought to a dark, shadowy alley, but she doesn't recognize the nightmare lurking there. Back in Yumi's world, Yumi trains Painter, and he is frustrated that she spends an entire week making him evaluate, weigh, and observe the stones without stacking any of them. After a week, she finally allows him to stack, and they are overjoyed when Painter stacks 5 rocks. A wagon arrives unexpectedly. The scholars have arrived to bless the town after hearing about their plight. They have brought their new invention, a machine that stacks stones. Yumi calls this an abomination. Yumi and Painter are back in his world. Yumi is asking for instructions on what she should practice painting. She is disappointed when Painter tells her bamboo. She feels as if she already mastered that and would like to practice something else. A knock is heard and Yumi opens it to find Arcane, Tojin, Misaka, and Izzy. They say that this is an intervention, and they want Yumi to take a break from her studies and have lunch with them. Initially, Painter does not wish for Yumi to go, but he ultimately gives her the choice to go if she wants. Yumi goes to the noodle pupil with the group. The group asks her where her brother is, and she tells him that he is doing important work, searching for a stable nightmare. They all roll their eyes and disregard this as if Painter is lying. Yumi feels sad that people react to Painter this way. Tojin shows off his muscles and gets excited to share strength training technique with other men who have just entered the restaurant. The group mentions the ship that is about to launch into the sky and search the planet that Painter believes Yumi is from. The group discusses aliens on that planet. Yumi excuses herself to go chat with Design and Painter. Design is stretching a glowing rope. She calls it a spirit web. She is trying to stretch it so that Painter and Yumi can go further distances from each other without getting tugged back toward one another. After spending her entire life alone and isolated, Yumi is a little reluctant at this development as she likes the idea of being near someone who cannot leave her side. Back in Yumi's world, Painter dismisses the attendants and chooses to eat, bathe, and dress himself. Yumi is horrified by his behavior. When Layun makes her appearance, Painter demands a canvas and paintbrushes. When Layun questions why, Painter explains that this is how he would like to meditate. Layun disapproves, but gives Painter what he requests. Painter paints and is disappointed that his creations don't draw any spirits. He tells Layun that he wants painting supplies every day. He goes to practice rock stacking and makes a little more progress on being able to stack properly. When he returns to the wagon, one of the attendants, Huanji, asks Yumi, who is actually Painter, to not reveal that this new behavior was of her doing. When Yumi/Painter expresses confusion as to why anyone would blame Huanji for her behavior, Huanji says that she used to serve a Yoki-Hijo who was part of the reform movement. 12 of the 14 current practicing Yoki-Hijo are not as strict and don't adhere to the procedure like Yumi was forced to. They are part of a reform movement where they are granted days off and the option to choose for themselves. Many of them see their families still. Yumi is shocked and devastated by the news. Painter promises Huanji that it will not be known that she provided this information. Back in Yumi's world, she is feeling the need to run free and break protocol. She tells Painter that she wants to do something crazy. Painter suggests that they sneak into the scholar's tent and take a look at the stone stacking machine. They make their way to the tent and Yumi passes through the tent fabric while Painter waits outside. Yumi hears scholars arguing about what is wrong with the machine and how to fix it. They decide that they need a spirit to help fix the machine and that they need to prime it. The 4th scholar in the room does some work on the machine and Yumi is surprised to see Heon lines being used to help the machine. Then, unexpectedly, 2 Heon lines come from her face and help start the machine. The scholars notice that there is a spirit present and yells at the other to get the capture device. Yumi runs out of the tent and she and Painter climb up a tree to avoid capture and avoid being seen. They go to perform the ritual and Painter successfully stacks several pillars of rocks. But near him, the scholars bring the machine and a spirit appears between Painter and the machine. Ultimately, the spirit goes toward the machine and the scholars capture it. Yumi is outraged that they stole their spirit. Painter feels hopeful after the progress he made and hopes that he can draw another spirit soon. Back in Painter's world, Yumi decides that she is ready to become a nightmare painter. As she and Painter are looking for the stable nightmare, they encounter a nightmare feeding off an elderly woman. Painter wants to move on as it's not the stable nightmare they've been looking for, but Yumi insists on trying to do something. As she gets out her painting supplies, she fumbles with the ink jar and starts to panic. Painter calls her name and the nightmare hears him and starts to feed off of him. Painter starts to disintegrate. Yumi screams and it frightens the nightmare away. Yumi is disappointed in her failure, but Painter says that everyone has trouble their first few times encountering a nightmare. They spot Tojin and Arcane, who heard Yumi scream. Tojin and Arcane take Yumi to the Noodle Pupil where they meet Izzy and Misaka. The group explain their strained relationship with Naikaro. When they were in school, Naikaro lied about getting accepted into the Dream Watch. Naikaro said that he would bring them all with him as companions, and they made plans together as a group for the entire year before they found out about his lie. Arcane tells Yumi that Naikaro is the most talented artist she has ever met. Yumi says that she needs time to process and goes back to his apartment where she opens the portfolio that Painter told her to never open. Inside, it has beautiful drawings. Naikaro is there and explains why he lied. He didn't want to crush their dreams like his were crushed when he didn't get accepted. There was always a reason he felt he couldn't tell them, and the lie continued for a year. Yumi says she wants to go out and be irresponsible. Painter takes her to the carnival to celebrate the launching of the ship. Painter introduces Yumi to carnival food, games, and a ride that resembles our version of a Ferris wheel. On the ride, they have a conversation about the last time they were both happy, a long time ago, and they both agree that in this moment, they are both happy. They leave the carnival, but on their way back to the apartment, they spot the stable nightmare. They run and split up. Painter wanted to lead the nightmare away while Yumi rang the bell to sound the alarm. But the nightmare can sense Yumi. It's been watching her, and she is frozen in place, fear taking over. Tojin and Arcane find her. They heard her scream. They lecture her about not doing a painter's job, but Yumi finds her feet again, and she flees back to where she dropped her things to ring the bell, but the nightmare appears before her. Before she can act, before Tojin and Arcane can catch up, the nightmare begins to feed off of Yumi's essence. Yumi refuses to go down without a fight, and she starts stacking broken concrete while the nightmare feeds. Tojin and Arcane finally appear, and the nightmare withdraws from Yumi, planning to kill Tojin and Arcane. They freeze in fear and don't begin to paint. Right before the nightmare reaches Tojin, Painter arrives, invisible to Tojin and Arcane, but Yumi watches him draw the soul of a paintbrush and start to paint. Painter is scared, but he reshapes the nightmare from its beastly form into a harmless puppy with his painting. The painting disappears almost as quickly as he creates it. The nightmare runs away. Painter is alarmed when he sees that Yumi isn't moving. When he sees her, she tells him that she is cold. Painter embraces her, and she is suddenly filled with warmth. They all go to the Noodle Pupil after, and Painter is surprised by the crowd. Tojin arrives and says that the Dream Watch has been notified and that they will take care of the stable nightmare. Design arrives and says that the ship, traveling via Heon lines, are about to touch down on the planet. Design turns on the Heon viewer, and the ship has touched down. When the doors open, they are met with aliens, not humans, with chalky white skin and 4 arms. They then realize that Yumi is not from that planet and that their theory was wrong the entire time. Yumi and Painter begin creating new theories about where she's from, potentially the same planet, but maybe different timelines? Yumi says that she has an idea. On the way to the ritual, Yumi and Painter ask the attendants about the creations of the scholars, and they say that something is wrong with their machine. The spirits that the machine summon aren't very strong. Painter begins stacking rocks, and Yumi helps him by taking the soul of the rock and stacking them so Painter can imitate the way she places each stone. Yumi allows Painter to pick the stone, but she places it perfectly. Soon they have several stacks and a spirit arrives. Yumi asks the spirit what they can do to help, and the spirit says to stop the machine. The spirit is quickly yanked away by the scholars, who immediately make the spirit into a repelling statue for lifting a home. Yumi realizes that the machine keeps a piece of the spirit's soul, which is why it doesn't work so well. Painter and Yumi are at the Noodle Pupil talking to Design, who brings out a machine to better read their spirit webs. Design says that Yumi is highly invested and that the nightmare should be scared of her. Design says that Painter is appropriately invested. Design tells Yumi that she sees 13 connections, and Yumi assumes that they are the other 13 Yoki-Hijo. She feels overwhelmed by wanting to be with the 13 others and runs off. She stops at the Shroud, a black barrier indicating the edge of the city. Painter follows her, and she starts stacking rocks. They are surprised that the Shroud is responding to her stacking. Design appears and observes what's happening with the Shroud. The Shroud parts, and a woman, another Yoki-Hijo, appears reaching toward them with a silent scream. They all recoil from this surprise, and the Shroud shrinks back to normal, closing off the girl. Yumi asks if Design knows what's beyond the Shroud. She doesn't know, and they all wonder why a Yoki-Hijo appeared to them, trapped in the dark. Painter says that they need to destroy the machine. Yumi wants to plan, but Painter says that they are running out of time and that he's willing to smash it himself. Yumi asks Design if she knows what's beyond the Shroud, but she admits that she doesn't, but knows someone who might. They return to the Noodle Pupil, where they go to the office, which is covered in numbers written all over the walls. Design brings in Misaka and introduces her to Yumi as Chinnik Dakordich, the 60th horde of the Netiketich strain. Painter claims that he knew Misaka wasn't human, and that this makes sense to him. Misaka says "we" as she speaks, and says that they have worked very hard to pull off being human. Design says that no horde would inhabit a planet planet without exploring all of the terrain. Masaka says that they have sent hordlings out and that most of the landscape beyond the cities is wasteland, but there are also places they simply cannot go. Masaka draws a map of the regions that they could not explore. Masaka says that she came here to hide. Yumi and Masaka make their way to the group, back to Tojin, Arcane, and Izzy. They make an unkind remark about Painter and Yumi becomes very angry. She sticks up for Painter and explains how his lie was wrong, but tries to get them to understand why he did it and how unfair it is that he was responsible for their lives and that their happiness depended on his success. Yumi thanks them for treating her well, but asks them to spare some kindness for Painter. She storms out and tells Painter that it's time to end this. In Yumi's world, Painter has Layun provide a map. He draws over the top of it, from what Masaka created, and sees that they overlap perfectly. He sees that he and Yumi are no more than 5 miles apart, that some of the earth is dark and powered by Heon lines, while the shroud covers the land that Yumi inhabits and cannot be breached. Yumi convinces Painter to tell Layun and the attendants that the spirits have demanded that they destroy the machine. Layun hesitates but agrees to rally the bailiff and the town officials. They all march toward the scholar's tent to demand that the machine be destroyed. Suddenly, Layun and the attendants freeze. The scholars are well aware of the fact that they are all on the same planet. They all shift into nightmares, and Layun transforms into the stable nightmare that they have been hunting. Yumi is in the fetal position and appears to be disappearing. Painter is horrified by this and begs to help her, but suddenly he is flung backward until he smacks into something hard. He is back in his apartment as himself, with Yumi nowhere to be seen. Yumi wakes up in her wagon without recollection of Painter and believes it to be 100 days before the festival in Torio City. As Yumi goes through her routine, she can't help but feel distracted and like something is wrong. When she goes to the cold spring for her ritual bath, she believes that someone is missing. Painter goes to the shroud and stacks rocks to attempt to get the shroud to respond the way it did to Yumi. It doesn't work. Arcane sees Painter and asks him what he's done and asks where he's been. Painter runs away. He goes back to the last place he saw the nightmare, Layun, in hopes of drawing her again. It works. Painter addresses her by name and Layun recognizes her name and makes her hesitate to attack Painter. Painter gives her a painting that Yumi made and asks Layun to give it to her, to help her remember. Layun agrees and says that she's been trapped like this for centuries, that the machine made her into this, and that they, the nightmares, wander Painter's world trying to seek themselves again. Before she leaves, she tells Painter that they are sending an army of 100 nightmares to the city. This happened before in Futanoro. The spirits contacted people in the city and the city was wiped out as a result. Yumi wakes up in her wagon, her attendants never arrive. Layun appears looking disheveled. Her behavior is strange as she tells Yumi that the town is sick and that she has to spend the day inside meditating. Layun drops the painting that Painter gave her on the floor. When Yumi looks at it, memories come flooding back to her. Painter runs to the Dream Watch. He is underwhelmed by their professionalism and lack of urgency when he tells them about the army of stable nightmares about to attack the city. They take his report and say that they will address the nightmares eventually. Painter discovers that getting into the Dream Watch is about who you know. It has nothing to do with skill or talent. He and his friends never had a chance to join them. He accepts that he must defend the city himself. Now that Yumi remembers everything, she grabs a rock and goes to the machine to smash it. The scholars, aka nightmares, watch her as she breaks it, but they are all unconcerned as there is a father machine that controls everything and this little machine is nothing in comparison. Yumi is told that the Yokihijo are the only ones the machine cannot control because the spirits guide them. That's why she was forced into captivity to live out the same day for hundreds of years. She is incredibly old, but incredibly naive. The nightmares go to attack and Yumi flees. 1700 years ago, the machine was created and activated at the Torish Festival of Spirits. The problem is that the machine recognized all souls and started feeding off of the people of Torio City. The shroud was created as a result of the machine feeding off of human souls and harvesting their investiture. Heon lines are the blood of enslaved spirits. Layun wandered the streets of Kilahito and observed the actions of Painter when he saved the boy from the nightmare. The hero-like action was enough for her. While Layun almost killed Yumi when she fed on her, Hoid says that she cannot be blamed as she hadn't felt herself for 1700 years. Yumi runs away from the scholar nightmares. She pulls the pin anchoring a tree and leaps up onto the tree, which takes flight. Painter goes to the Noodle people and begs the help of his old friends. He tells them the truth and says he needs help to stop the 100 nightmares coming to attack. Tojin is the first to support Painter. Tojin says that the night he almost got attacked by the nightmare, he thought he saw Painter there. Arcane and Masaka show support next and they all agree to recruit other painters to join. Yumi's talons were fake to keep her under control. The spirit connected Yumi and Painter, which kept her safe from the machine. The spirit didn't intend for them to swap bodies, but irregularities happen when messing with spiritual connection. Yumi drifts on the floating tree. The tree is also a product of the shroud, and it's quickly dissolving. Yumi escapes her fake city and goes through the shroud atop the tree. Because she believes that the tree should remain solid, it does. Because she believes that the wind blows her toward Torio City, where the machine is, it does. By thinking thoughts, she can force things into reality. As Painter and the others wait for the attack, Arcane approaches Painter to ask if he imagined it all. She asks if he needs to seek help. Arcane forgives Painter. Right as the others are getting restless, the shroud starts to undulate and the nightmares appear. Yumi lands in Torio City and demands that the nightmares bow to her. She remembers that they are afraid of her and she demands to know how to destroy the machine. They say that she cannot. Painter steps in to help painters who have frozen in fear, and he paints and transforms nightmares into kittens, flowers, birds, and bamboo as he takes on several nightmares at once. But he knows it's a matter of time before they are overcome. The nightmares aren't disappearing, just transforming briefly, then slowly regrowing into their monstrous shapes. Yumi enters the rubble that is Torio City. She finds the machine hard at work stacking stones. As Yumi tries to approach the machine, she runs into an invisible barrier, a shield protecting the machine. The other painters are losing hope, and Painter encourages them to continue painting. He declares that they are now the Dream Watch. Layun arrives, and Painter realizes that he knows what to do next. Yumi is frustrated by the barrier, but realizes that the machine doesn't care. She kneels to start stacking stones of her own. Painter paints Layun as he knows her to be, a woman. He realizes that the nightmares are people and need to be treated as such. Painter paints the nightmares as people, and their people forms hold because that is their true form and the one that they want to return to. Eventually, Painter draws all 100 nightmares and transforms them into people once again. Yumi stacks incredible structures until she steals the spirits from the machine. As the spirits abandon the machine no longer has the power to continue functioning. The spirits are free, and they thank Yumi. The shroud begins to disintegrate. Yumi begins to turn to smoke. No machine, no shroud, no Yumi. Yumi and Painter can converse through their connection. Though they are not physically together, they can speak with one another, and they both declare their love for each other. Yumi disappears. Painter refuses to let Yumi go. He begins painting a mural of Yumi sitting in the tree after they snuck into the scholar's tent. The shroud is dissipating, but Painter's art brings Yumi to life. As Painter finishes his painting, Yumi speaks to him from a piece of the shroud that is quickly disappearing. Yumi says that it's not right for her to stay, but Painter says, "Our world, our rules." He convinces her to choose a life that she decides to live for once, that she deserves love and happiness. She reaches out to Painter and he grabs her and pulls her from the shroud. He holds her under the mural. Hoyd finally wakes up. Design, the cryptic, asks him what happened. Hoyd installed some protocols to protect his investiture in the event that someone tried to steal it. He didn't expect to become a statue that Design transformed into a coat rack, but it happened. Hoyd and Design are ready to leave the planet. Design says that she left the noodle shop to Painter and Yumi. They plan to steal a spaceship and leave the planet immediately. Yumi and Painter kiss outside the Noodle Princess, where they install an art room with Painter's drawings and Yumi's rock stackings. They convince their friends that Yumi was Nikero's secret girlfriend and not his sister. Now that there is no machine, no shroud, there are no nightmares, and no need for painters. There's also no need for Yokihijo, but Yumi and Painter find a new purpose and run the noodle shop together. That's it. That is everything that happened in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. I hope I did it justice because fantasy books are very difficult to provide a well-rounded recap because there's a lot going on. Not only a bunch of stuff going on with the characters, with the world, with the magic, but just all combined, it's a lot. So hopefully it made sense. If you're here just to revisit the events after reading it, I'm sure it all made sense to you. But if you're listening to the story for the first time because of me talking about it, I'm sorry. I hope it made sense. Let me know in the comments. If you have read this book, I would love to hear from you. Please leave me a comment. Let me know how you liked Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. If you've read the rest of the secret projects that came out in 2023, let me know how this one compared to the rest. And if you're still with me, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. I hope the summary video was helpful to you, and I hope you're reading something great. If you're reading something Brandon Sanderson, great. I doubt you'll be disappointed, but let me know what you're reading. All right, I think that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope to catch you in another video, and until next time, I will catch you on the flip side.